There's a couple seats up here. Otherwise, sorry, you can stand in the back. You're closer to the bar that way. Thank you all for coming to the first mayoral debate with 3 candidates. I'm George Sens. I'm the publisher and editor of the Middleton Review, and I will try and moderate the debate. This debate is actually part of a regular series of community forums that the Middleton Review is going to be hosting. They will usually take place, and I'm making this announcement as a commercial for myself and for the Middleton Review. They will usually take place on the last Thursday of the month or last Wednesday. And after this one, the next one will be Thursday, February 27th at 7 p.m. at the Village Green. And it'll be with Alder Persons, Robert Burke, Emily Kuhn, Susan West, and Mark Sullivan. And they are going to be talking about a range of topics that are of interest to the city. I'm not going to go through the whole list so we can get this debate started. Anyway, you're all invited to that one as well. So the way the debate is going to go tonight is I'm going to very briefly introduce all 3 candidates. And then they are going to make introductory statements. I'm going to ask some questions. At some point, we're going to open it to the floor, and you will have the opportunity to ask questions as well. You can address your questions to all 3 candidates, or you can address them to just one specific candidate. They are limited in time for how long they are allowed to talk. I would like you, when you ask your questions, to please just ask questions and not make speeches. Also, I would like very much to thank Capital Brewery because they are donating the space. They set it up for us, and so yes, it's a nice setup, and I hope it works out for everybody. The first thing, well, I'm going to introduce the candidates first in alphabetical order, very briefly. Gurdeep Brar, the current mayor. Kurt Paulson, current member of the Plan Commission. And Dan Ramsey, alderman for District 7. That was my introduction. Now I'm going to go to an unsuspecting member, person in the front row, and would you please pull a name and read it.
Kurt Paulson.
That means Kurt Paulson will go first in the order of answering questions. And since you did that very well.
Dan Ramsey.
Thank you. So Dan Ramsey will go second, and then by default, Gurdeep Brar will go third. And then we're going to rotate the order to try and be reasonably fair, no matter what else I'm usually accused of. Who was the first one? So the candidates each have 3 minutes for their introductory statements. And I'm going to keep time as well. And
ready? Howard, can you hear us in the back? Yeah. Okay, so we're good. This is really echoey. So, ready?
All right.
Okay.
Ready.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Kurt Paulson, and thank you so much for coming. I think the fact that we have an overflow crowd shows how much all of us love Middleton and are concerned for its future. And so this is local democracy in action. So thank you for being here. And we're all a little jealous because you're drinking beer and we're not. So I want to start by thanking George and the Middleton Review and Capital Brewery for hosting us. And just wanted to answer 3 questions for you that you're probably having. Who is this guy? Why is he running? And what is his vision for the city? So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin, up in the north, right? And when I was in high school, my dad was elected to city council and county board, which I thought was kind of crazy. And he told me that someone who understands local government, and particularly finance, is really important, which I thought was the stupidest thing in the world, because I was in high school. But the funny thing is now that's what I do for a living, so that's irony. My wife and I moved to Madison area for graduate school back in the 90s, and other than 8 years when we lived near Philadelphia, we've been living in the Madison, Middleton region for since the 90s, I guess. Right, we have 3 kids in the school district. I have a senior in high school, a sophomore in high school, and I have a 7th grader at Cromrie. And my parents were both public school teachers, and we strongly value the schools. That's one of the reasons we moved to Middleton, of course. We all love our wonderful school district. For my day job, I'm a professor at UW, and I teach urban planning and landscape architecture. And I focus on a lot of the issues that I think the city is dealing with, economic development, housing, and municipal finance. So one of the things I do in that job that's a lot of fun is I get to help mayors and city councils around the state wrestle with a lot of the challenges that they're facing, which is also what we're facing. So why am I running? As I've been participating in local government for many years, I've had a number of people ask for a new generation to step up and take leadership with a positive vision. So my vision of the city, as we'll have a chance to talk more about, is a city that is welcoming and inclusive, and most of all, is sustainable. One of our greatest challenges right now is fighting climate change. Given divided government at the federal and state levels, cities are where the action is going to be. So I hope to earn your respect and earn your vote on February 18th. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dan. You may know a little bit about me, and I am the District 7 Alderman and current City Council President. What you may not know about me is I'm a native of Middleton. I grew up here. I went to Middleton schools, Sauk Trail, Cromrie, Middleton High School. I love this city. As a child, I played in the Conservancy, running around, splashing in the creek behind Cromrie Middle School, sledding in Middleton Hills. I have a passion for this city, and it is my sincere desire to serve this city to the best of my ability and all of our great neighbors here. My greatest asset is my family. As you may know, the Ramsey family has had multi-generational experiences with public service. Some of you may remember that my father was mayor from 1977 to 2003. My wife, Michelle, my lovely wife, Michelle, has been an RN, registered nurse for 30 years. I have 4 daughters. My daughter, Karina, followed in her mother's footsteps and is also a registered nurse. Our daughter, Harmony, is a middle school choir director and music teacher. Our daughter, Brianna, UW graduate and real estate specialist. Rosie, Virginia, is a excuse me. She's so brand new at this that it's taken me a while to get used to it. She's an emergency room physician's assistant. Our twin sons, Danny and Derek, both have served in the military, and something that we're all very proud of. I myself have served as an Army reservist, and now I have the pleasure of being, and the privilege of being Alder for District 7. My focus for mayor is 3-piece concept: community, communication, common sense. Our city government has a responsibility to its citizens. Every citizen deserves a voice. I want to be that voice. Common sense. It's very easy for a politician to define what the issue is. It's very rare for them to come up with common sense, practical solutions for those problems. I want to be that voice. Communication. The most important thing for a mayor is communication. Our job is to listen to you, the constituents, not to listen to the sound of our own voice. I listen. I'm a consensus builder. I would appreciate the opportunity to be your mayor and listen to your voices. Thank you.
Good evening. How are we doing? Well, my name is Gurdeep Rar. I am the mayor of Middleton, and I'm happy and honored to be here with you. So I'm going to tell you about myself and then what I have done and what my vision is for the future for this city. So I grew up in northern India on a farm, and I came to the United States to earn my PhD in genetics at University of California, Riverside. My wife with 2 young children, we moved to Middleton in 1982, and we have lived in the same house overlooking the Piedmont Pond and on Sweeney Drive. Our kids, Gloria and Victor, they both went to Elmland, Cramry, and Middleton High School. So very early on, I realized that Middleton was a great place to live, work, and raise a family. So Middleton has been wonderful to us, and I wanted to get involved and keep it that way. I have 33 years of community service in Middleton schools and environmental groups, and that includes Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Middleton Outreach Ministry, as well as many other groups. So in 2002, I founded a conservancy group called Friends of Kettle Pond, and at the Middleton High School, I founded a Key Club, which is a leadership group to help kids learn about the leadership. So in 2008, I was elected as an elder for District 2, and I love communicating with people, and I was able to address a lot of citizens' concern at that time. And then 3 years ago, I was elected mayor on a platform of better roads, protection of natural resources, encouraging broader participation by the citizens and city government. I have done what I said I would do. You can all tell whether it's a Gammon Road or whether it's a University Avenue, we have better roads. And I have appointed many of you to the city committees. So I have much broader participation of the citizens and the city government. So from the very beginning, I have been an active community member. I love serving the people of this great city, listening to their concerns and addressing them. My passion is to make a difference in the lives of other people, and thank you.
All right, thank you. The first question, and this time it's Dan Ramsey who starts, and then Gurdeep, and then Kurt Paulson. My first question is, I was going to ask why you're running for mayor, but I know why you run for mayor, because you want to become mayor. But
Well, I suppose that's part of it.
But why do you want to be mayor, and how do you see the role as mayor?
The reason why I want to be mayor is I think that it's very important for the person that is the mayor of Middleton to be someone that is approachable, to be someone that listens, to be someone that people feel as though they can come to and talk to, and that will try to understand and work towards a consensus for whatever problem that they may have, or whatever issue that they may have, or whatever issue that the city is dealing with. I think that I can do that. My role on the city council has been one of a consensus builder, one that takes and listens to all viewpoints objectively, and takes and tries to take into account what everybody thinks and tries to come up with a common consensus that will work for everybody. That's not to say that everybody always agrees with me. Hopefully, most of the time. But I will listen to you, and I'm not going to be a mayor that's just going to tell you what you want to hear. So that's part of the reason why I want to be mayor. The other part of the reason why I want to be mayor is my vision for the city. My vision is a little bit different than the vision of the 2 other gentlemen up here, I think. I think that the city of Middleton has done a lot of very great and wonderful things from our sustainability, our libraries, our school. We can all agree on these various different things that City of Middleton has to offer and how great they are. I think one of the things that we've struggled mightily with in our development is the opportunity for young people to buy homes in the City of Middleton. Currently, there is almost no opportunity at all for somebody, a growing family, to come to live in Middleton and buy into a piece of home ownership, to have that piece of equity. We often hear that millennials don't do that anymore. Well, that's not true. I have millennials. My children are all millennials. I live next to millennials. I talk to millennials all the time. That is not true. We are failing them in that one respect. My goal and one of my missions as mayor would be to try to find a way to help fill that gap, help fill that role, so that there is an opportunity for folks to come into Middleton and to buy a home. How many young families really want to come into a city and rent a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment? That's not sustainable. We need to look at different options, think outside of the box, and come up with some solutions for home ownership for our young people, a way that they can join the rest of us in gaining equity and wealth in their home, in their hometown. And that's why I wish to run for Middleton. Thank you.
Why do I want to be a mayor for another 3 years? Well, I love helping people. To begin with, I had thought that the goals which I had set, I'm goal-oriented, that they will be done in 3 years. And then came the floods of 2018. Then there came the floods of 2018, and then came the floods of 2018, and they were devastating to our nature conservancy, to our ponds. What's the issue? It's giving.
Just hold it.
So,
Hold it, please.
okay. So, can you hear it now? Lot louder? Okay. Well, I'm going to be a little bit louder. So what I wanted to do was to serve only one term and get the things done. Then came the floods of 2018, and they just slowed things down. Then we have to commit our resources to controlling more floods and then getting what I had planned to do. I took care of the major roads, but we still have the neighborhood roads which still need fixing. And as I said, I'm passionate about communicating with people, and I have developed a lot of relationship with our neighboring mayors. So what I want to do is, I have learned from these floods that the climate is changing and these floods are not stopping, and we got to mitigate the floods as well. And so I think I can work with the area mayors and make a difference. So I think what I really want to do is to make a difference, as I have been doing in the lives of the people, and work with the regional people, including the town of Springfield, as well as city of Madison, so that we can mitigate flood. Keep on doing the promises which I had made, the 5 promises, and finish them. One of them is where we control the property taxes. Property taxes are very regressive. The people who are retired and live on fixed income, they have very difficult time. So I think I want to create a culture where we are fiscally more responsible. So I have 5 goals. I'm going to work on those and finish those goals with your help and working with you. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me in the back? Excellent. So, why do I want to be mayor? When people approached me a few years ago asking me to consider running for mayor, it was because they were saying, we want a mayor who will share our values, reflect our values, the values of this community that we see in terms of investing in public education, investing in public safety, having a high quality community, more affordable housing, and someone who's concerned about fighting climate change and protecting the environment. So it's important that you have a mayor who shares your values and reflects your values, and a mayor who can take leadership and help bring people together. The other reason I want to be mayor is I see that the challenges we face in this city are no different than the challenges faced by cities all across the state and all across the country, right? How do we manage a more sustainable transportation system so that we can expand biking, walking, and transit options as a way to fight climate change? How do we address issues of affordable housing to make sure that everyone who wants to live here can afford to live here? How do we create those opportunities, as Councilman Ramsey was saying, for young people to purchase homes and to be able to afford to live in the community? So I'm also running based on kind of four main priorities. The first priority is we have to reinvest in Pheasant Branch Conservancy and work to create a watershed plan that will stop flooding and reduce the damage from flooding, right? I'm very thankful. I live close to the Conservancy. I walk there all the time. Previous generations invested in the Conservancy, created that and saved that land for us. It's our turn to reinvest and get it right, to restore the beauty of the Conservancy, but also to make it more resilient to future increased climate-induced big rainfall events. The second reason is, again, to expand transit, walking, and biking so that we have sustainable transportation options. The third reason I'm running for mayor is to support our public safety and first responders. You know, I'm pleased to say that on the day he retired, Police Chief Chuck Folk did endorse me because he saw in me a chance for both progressive leadership, but also someone who will support and fight for the resources for our public safety, police, fire, and EMS to get the resources they need. And then the fourth reason I'm running is to expand housing options, both for ownership and for rental, because we have a real shortage of housing, and Middleton is becoming a really expensive place to live.
Well, they're all staying under their limits. It's great. I also noticed that nobody answered the question of how you see the role as mayor. We might get back to that. Since there's three of you running, presumably you all think that you're better than the other two. So I would like to know from all of you, from each of you, why people should vote for you, what you think you can contribute to the job as mayor that your two components cannot. And we're starting with Gurdeep Brar. Thank you.
Well, that's a great question. And I think to begin with, I would say that I have been in Middleton since 1982. And I have known this community from one corner to the other. And as a mayor, I think I can tell you that I have walked almost every street and I have met many of you. So what I really enjoy doing is talking to people, learning their concern and addressing their concerns. And then I come with a science background. I look at the problems in a scientific way, and that's what I have been doing at the City Hall as well. So, and the third thing is that my almost 3 years at the City Hall as a mayor, I have learned the things, I have learned a lot of lessons, the things which work and the things which do not work. So I bring that experience. And I have been on the City Council for 9 years. And the people in District 2, they can see I delivered on every promise which I made, whether it was a traffic light on Greenway Station, or it was building a Middleton Street, or whether it was putting a crosswalk across the Gammon Road, or it was the Piedmont Pond Park, any of those things. So what I said, what I did. So I think, so these guys are great guys. I honor, respect both of them, but I bring the experience of being in Middleton, experience as an elder person and experience as a mayor, and my passion to help the people of Middleton.
Well, so in many ways, answered the question last time. But again, what I'm doing is I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking that you would trust the combination of experience and vision for the city, and someone who can bring people together and help to lead into the challenges we face in the future. So let me address the other question that George asked, which is the role of the mayor. And one of the things I think people misunderstand is that in a city like Middleton, we have what's called a weak mayor system. Now, it seems strange that people would want to run to be a weak mayor, right? But what that means is that the day-to-day administration of the city, by charter ordinance, is with the city administrator, right? So all of the department heads do report to the city administrator, not to the mayor. So the job of a mayor in a city like this is to cast vision and bring people together and help to resolve conflicts and to help the city council and our stakeholders work together to address many of our challenges. So the mayor has very little actual institutional power, right? And so all of the role of the mayor is persuasion and leadership and trying to bring people together around a vision. Thank you.
I think that the difference that I bring to the position of mayor is I've been here for 38 out of my 57 years. I remember Middleton from the time that you could look out and see nothing but field all along the Beltline. I remember I have a historical perspective that I don't think either of these two gentlemen have. And that historical perspective is good because it helps give you a vision of what you want to be moving forward. And like the question that was asked, what is the role of the mayor? As Kurt said, this is a weak mayor system. So the role of the mayor principally is, as a CEO, to kind of oversee everything, but mostly vision. What is your vision? How can you sell your vision? How can you share your vision with other people? How do you communicate that vision? And how do you listen to the citizens of Middleton to hear what their vision is? Because ultimately, this isn't my city. This isn't our city. It's your city. So the vision should be what you want. And that's where, as a mayor, that's where my role would be. My role would be to listen to you, to learn, find out what your vision is, and be able to articulate your vision. And take that vision and have that vision coincide with the past. Not going back to the past, but remembering our past and moving forward to our future. Thank you.
Do you have 3 seconds to add something or say something?
Middleton, in spite of this being an economic good time in general, Middleton is faced with financial challenges. As we hear every year during budget meetings, priorities have to be made. There's an increasing or a looming budget gap in the operating budget between revenues and expenses. Due to circumstances not entirely Middleton's fault, mostly state-imposed levy caps in the property tax, Middleton cannot raise, or any municipality cannot raise property taxes the way they would like to in order to meet all their operating expenses. So my question is, how do you intend to deal with that, considering all the constraints that the city is under?
This is an example of where leadership has to come in. The state has made it very difficult for cities to be able to do their day-to-day business. The only avenues that are left to cities are either to raise fees or to go to referendum or to tighten their belts. I'm more of a fiscal conservative. I've had so many people stop and talk to me in the last several weeks about the raise in the property tax because of the school referendum. And I've had so many people say to me, we don't want another referendum. We can't afford another referendum. Dan, we can't afford another double-digit increase in our taxes. I, myself, publicly would support a referendum, going to referendum for a targeted public safety referendum, which would help deal with our EMS and our police force. Otherwise, in our budgeting, I would propose a zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is where you take what you had last year for a budget, and that is your budget. Anything above and beyond that would have to be justified and be debated at the council. Another thing that I would look at as mayor to help contain some of our costs is look at collaborative opportunities with other communities, neighboring communities, and some of the things that they're doing. One of the things that we could look at collaboratively doing is in our transportation. We all know what happened with Madison Metro and the surprise that they pulled on us in the last minute and raised our city bus service by $70,000. It left us in a terrible bind at the council. One of the things that we can do is we can work with those surrounding communities and go back to Madison Metro and say, hey, as a group of communities, we want to negotiate. So we could work that way. Another thing that I envision seeing is having semi-annual meetings with all the department heads to look at their budgets, see where they are in their budgets, see if there are going to be any excess funds, any places that we can potentially save. But that would be my goal, and that would be the way that I would look at the budget. Thank you.
Budgeting. So I have gone through 11 budgets now. So now the budgeting which the city is doing is a zero-based budget. That means whatever you spend in the, can you hear in the back or not? So that whatever you had spent in the earlier year, that's what you budget, and everything else you have to justify. So what I would like to push the staff, and I have been doing this, that number one, if there's any grant, whether it is state, local, or federal, which we can apply for, apply. And I give you one example. So this past year, I got $500,000, helped get $500,000 from the county, and $400,000 for this year. In total, got $900,000. And then the city had also gotten $600,000 from the DNR to repair the Pheasant Branch Conservancy, which we all love, and I want to bring it back to the same glory which it had before 2017. So number one, to push the staff to keep applying for grants wherever they are. And now I'm asking the staff again to apply for grants to take care of the Graper Pond, and we are applying it. And the second thing, which I will do, and I have been doing, I'm fiscally conservative too. Everybody knows it. I don't need to say that. So that is that when we have the capital budget, so if you are having the bidding for the projects in a timely and competitive manner, that means there are certain times when you bid for those projects and you get a lot more people bidding for it. You save a lot of money there. And you want to do the same thing, whether you are hiring the engineering services or any of the other things. For everything, do it in a timely and competitive manner. If there's only one or two bids, why is that? So try to induce more bids coming there. And you can save a lot of money over there too. And then we have a TIF money. We have been using the TIF money very generously, and again, use TIF money where it's helped the city overall. Of course, it's not affecting the operating budget, but that's something else which I would do as well, and I have been doing it. So I think overall is focusing on a bigger picture, and as far as I know that the levy limit is constraining, and that is putting the pressure on the staff. But you know, Middleton has been quite lucky that we have been going pretty good development. Last year before it was 3 years. This year it was 1.7 year. At least that covers our expenses for the cost of living adjustment and others. Thank you.
So like Dan said, when I go door to door, one of the concerns of a lot of people is property taxes. And a lot of that is this property tax increase from the schools. But as a community, we voted pretty overwhelmingly, and I voted in favor, because we have to keep investing in public education, right? And it is not just trying to blame the state, but the state has cut aid to school districts of $3.9 billion. So what that means is that's coming out of your taxes in terms of property taxes. And all else being equal, I'd much rather have the state pay for education through an income tax than through a property tax, because it's more appropriate to your ability to pay, right? Because seniors on fixed income, their property values may be high because they've paid off their home, but obviously they're on fixed income. But I think one of the jobs of the mayor is to have an honest conversation with the community about our fiscal situation, right? We can't just keep promising people more and better services and lower taxes. And the truth is, and I'm going to apologize, I'm a public finance professor, so I ran the numbers, right? In inflation-adjusted terms, property taxes are up in Middleton, $22 a person in the last 5 years. But that's not because we spend too much. Spending per capita in inflation terms is down $300, right? So we are already squeezed. And you already see that when you see that the roads are in the shape they're in. We have difficulty with public lands and public works crews just keeping up with all the work orders. So the honest conversation is, if we want to maintain our levels of service, same number of police, same number of workers in public works, right? Police and public works is a significant component of our budget. I'm sorry, police, EMS, and public works, right? Public safety. And I have to be honest, when I look at the budget, when I see the city council goes to the budget deliberations, there's not a lot of places to cut. So we do need to keep looking for additional sources of revenue that shifted off the property tax. One of the things we voted for was the stormwater fee to be able to support the debt service for reinvestment in Pheasant Branch Conservancy, right? And so I think that's the kind of things we're going to have to look at. But the truth is, we need the state to start paying its fair share. State aid to local governments is way down. And services still need to be kept up. The roads need to be plowed, the grass needs to be mowed. So we need to have that honest conversation which says, if we can't raise additional revenue, we're probably going to have to start cutting services, and then the question is, what do we cut? And I don't think we have a lot of room to cut.
Middleton has grown a lot over the past decades, not least through the use of TIF. More development, more growth leads to more need for public services, which, on the other hand, the state system with the levy cap means that the city has to grow in order to be able to raise the property taxes, so it's kind of a catch-22. So is this, how do you propose to deal with the development, the need for development on the one hand, on the other hand, the increased cost that development brings? And outside of TIF, does Middleton have anything to offer development-wise?
So there's a couple of components to that. And one thing I didn't say is, it is our plan and our hope, and certainly something I would do as mayor, that in the next fiscal year, we're going to take $100 million in property tax base out of TID number 3 and put it back on the property tax base. And given that we have levy caps, what that means is that should lower the tax rates for the taxpayers in the city, right? And what that proves is that our success in TIF, in creating economic development, which means investment and jobs and property value, is one of the ways we keep property taxes low. If you want a way to think about it, if 30% of our tax base is from the business community, right? Then to raise $1 of revenue only costs residents 70 cents. So we have to, in order to keep the budget balanced, continue to attract jobs, investment, and economic growth, both in our TIF districts and outside of our TIF districts. Now, as you might know, in the state, TIF is really the only economic development incentive we have. So there's really not much else the city can do. We can provide small loans to small businesses if needed, help get them technical assistance through WEDC or the Small Business Administration to get loans, but TIF is really the only game in town. Now the question is, and again, I realize that property levy caps are kind of a confusing topic, but basically what the state says to us is if the value of new construction in your city is 2% this year, then you can only raise property taxes 2% next year, right? And in most states that have caps, they allow you to go up by inflation because most of our budget is salaries, right? And that has to go up 2 or 3% a year just to deal with inflation, cost of living, fuel, all the costs that keep going up. So we are in that catch-22 because the only way to get increased revenue is to get new tax base. And Middleton has been more successful than almost any city in the entire state in terms of economic development in our TIF. And that's something I think we need to keep going, right? We have TID number 3, which is the most successful TIF district in the state. And in the next 10 years, that'll be able to pay for a lot of infrastructure because of the development, right? It will not be on the property tax. We're going to pay for it with TIF. And then in about 10 years, we're going to close that. And that will be about $300 million in tax base added to the city, which will lower property taxes for existing residents. So I know that sometimes people think TIF is this magic pot of money over here that you can just use to pay for everything. But it's really for infrastructure and it's for economic development. And it actually adds a lot of value to our community because it grows the tax base, which keeps the tax rates lower for the homeowners.
Yes, TIF is one of those things that you can spend hours and hours and hours talking about. It's very confusing. There's so many intricacies to it. But as Kurt has said, TIF is the only game in town when it comes to economic development. So it would be irresponsible for us as a city to say, no, no more TIF, we're not going to do any more TIF. That would be an irresponsible thing for us to do as a city. We need to continue to develop. If you don't develop, if a city doesn't develop, a city is just like an organism. If it doesn't continue to grow, it dies. It gets stagnant. So we do have to continue to grow. We do have to continue to have development. So the question is, what kind of development are we going to have? And how do we want to tailor our TIF? One of the things that we are doing now as a city is we have put together a new TIF policy. And that TIF policy now brings all of the TIF projects to the Finance Committee where they can be discussed, debated, and negotiated with the developers, where before there wasn't the opportunity to negotiate like there is now. One of the things that I think is important with TIF as a tool is TIF allows there to be some money for public infrastructure. One of the things that I'm very passionate about in District 7 is the North Mendota Trail, which is a bike trail, a bike path from the north side of town connecting us who live on the north with the folks who live downtown. That path is funded because of TIF, because TIF is allowed to go outside of its boundary. So in order to be able to afford that project and not have to take capital money for that, we use TIF. So the question is, how do we want to handle our TIF? This is how I envision our TIF. I envision our TIF when the developer comes forward, asks for a TIF award, we go through it, we look at it. I am not in favor of 100% TIF for any developer. Our goal should be somewhere in the 50% range for a TIF award for any developer that comes forward. As a matter of fact, we just had a business come forward and ask us for TIF money. 25% of the increment is going to go to the project. 75% of it is going to go back to the TIF district. That's a win-win. We want to see those. We want to see more of those. So that's what I would envision in our development, tightening up our TIF budget, making sure more of the increment goes towards the TIF district. Thanks.
Well, that's an excellent question. For Middleton, TIF has been a great blessing. Our TIF 3 district is the largest district in the state. But his question is not what you can do with the TIF, but what you can do without it. And so let's look at Middleton. Why do people want to come to Middleton? Because of our highly ranked schools, because it's a safe place to live, because it's close to the university and the state capital. So the Middleton, even though you cannot offer TIF in some cases, because it's such a desirable place which the Middleton offers to the developers, so they would be doing this in any case. And a little bit about TIF. I have been wanting to have a written policy for TIF, as some of the staff can tell here, for many, many years. And finally, we have a written TIF policy which we are going to follow, hopefully will follow. And the second point which was brought up is that about 10 years ago, we had taken some money from the TIF to fund our budget, and we were reducing that TIF money, which we were taking from the TIF district, about $100,000 a year. So we are taking $100 million out of TIF very soon, and then you will get some of the break, and city will also have some more funds to fund the project. So again, we got two tools. One is the TIF and the other not the TIF. And one of the things which I would do is that keeping public safety as a priority number one, which has been with me for all along. So that will be also attracting more people here. So I think, providing great schools, providing public safety, and within a half mile of the TIF district, you can still use TIF. So like we are using to build that trail in District 7. So I think, so we will do that within a half mile where we can still use TIF and help some of the developers, but otherwise, provide the community which is the best game in town, and do whatever else you can do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm done with my part. At this point, I would like to turn it over to questions from the audience. As I said earlier, you can direct them to 1, 2, all 3 candidates. And there's going to be a time limit again on how long they have to answer. And I hope I won't have to impose a time limit on your questions. So, and we have the microphone here. Oh, there's a hand, a very excited hand up already.
My name is Dr. Ray Collier. This is my wife, Natalie. As you can see, she is a wheelchair user. And when we go shopping in Middleton, what's the first thing that happens to us? We get to the door of the business, and it emphasizes her disability because there's no opener. This is extremely frustrating because then I have to figure out how to open the door and get her through the door. So I want to hear from all 3 of you. What would you do to incentivize helping businesses to be more inclusive? I heard 1 or 2 of you saying you want the city to be inclusive. Painting a blue wheelchair on the ground is not enough.
Is there an order?
Yeah, well, that's the great question, and it's not just to be able to open the doors. I have talked to, when I'm going around and talking to people, there's also a need for a handicap parking right along the roadside, and I did bring it up to the staff meeting, And I know there are some issues there. They were talking about that it will be expensive, but the thing is, it is not a question of how much it costs. It is that we have to be fair and fair to all our citizens. And the people who have disability, we especially owe to them that we are even nicer than the other. So I think that's one thing which I'm trying to do, and let's hope I'm successful with that. And the second part is how to make businesses to install some of those features so that they can open the door. I think I'm going to look into it and see that whether we could help them get grants, or whether we can, I don't know if city can do something as well, but I think city possibly could. And briefly, I'm going to, as a mayor, try to see whatever city can do. And then the second will be that whether we can get some grants in cooperation with the businesses. So, and I'm also open from ideas from you, because, you know, you all have experience, and in your case, you have first-hand experience. I will be more than happy to come and talk to you and ask for your suggestion. We learn from each other. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say I'm disappointed that there are businesses in Middleton that you can't get into. In today's world, I find that appalling, and I'm sorry that it's that way. The city has a certain amount of flexibility in our ordinances and in our provisions when a business comes to us and says we want to relocate in Middleton, or we want to add on to our building, or we want to remodel, or we just want to open a business in Middleton. We can make sure that as part of the planning process that we go through these items and we make sure that there's a checklist to make sure that folks like you are able to access these buildings safely. There's really no excuse for this. And I can only apologize. There's just no excuse. I'm kind of ashamed to hear that we would have that problem here. We consider ourselves to be inclusive. We consider ourselves to be progressive. That is not the way we want to be. And as a city, we need to get involved. We need to make sure that our ordinances are up to date. We need to make sure that everybody's complying with the ADA, you know, alphabet soup. And we need to make sure that in our zoning and in our permit processes, that those issues are looked at and handled and taken care of. Thank you.
I want to echo Dan's comments. That's shameful, it's embarrassing, and it's just not consistent with our values. So in my field of urban planning, there is this concept called universal design, right? And it says that when we design buildings and public spaces so that everyone has equal access to them, it produces a social benefit that spills over to everybody. So the classic example is the curb cuts required under the Americans with Disabilities Act is also really good for people with strollers, right? And unfortunately, as you know, the Americans with Disabilities Act does not apply to private property owners. So as a city, we want to make sure that any public building, any public space we design, we use universal design principles. We want to make sure that if we are giving development assistance to a developer through TIF, that we require universal design and accessibility features along with sustainability features. The other thing we can do is we can band together as a community and go to businesses and say, what can you do to change? What can we do to help you? Can we help you get grants? There are some accessibility grants that are available, but you know, you have one of the larger property owners in the city sitting on the left end of your row. Let's ask property owners, what are you going to do to be more inclusive? And then we can work together as a city to provide financial incentives if it's there. But the real issue is, we have no, if it's an existing business, and unless they're asking for money or a zoning change, we have no real authority to force them to do it, other than public pressure to say, you really want to be inclusive to everyone. And then if we as a city can help them apply for grants or financing from the state, that's what we should do. But again, I think we're all sorry, and what we need is we need a forum, right, through either the Bike, Pedestrian, and Transit Committee or the Public Works Committee, where we're regularly hearing the feedback from people who have different abilities and how they are interacting with the city. And I know one thing we can do as a city that I've seen done in other cities is to actually do an accessibility audit, right? Where we actually go out with people who are differently able, to have wheelchairs, and we walk around and see what all of the impediments are, and then we can make a checklist and start fixing them. So, thank you.
Hi, my name's Kermit Hovey. The climate crisis is really happening, really serious, really human caused, and we can still really do something about it. The community of Middleton all but universally recognizes this. As a concerned citizen, climate crisis action advocate, member of the Middleton Sustainability Committee, and co-leader of the local 350 chapter's Community Climate Solutions team, which I'd be happy to talk about to anybody if they want, I want to see Middleton continue at the forefront of climate action. What, let's say 3 new policies, projects, or programs would each of you commit to make happen to help address the climate crisis?
Thank you for that question. You're right, sustainability is a very, very important part of what we do as a city. We have, and Middleton has made great strides. We have our solar array that we just put out at the municipal airport. We have solar on our police station. We have solar on our MOC building, our Middleton Operations Center. I would advocate as mayor to continue along those same things, and any new buildings that we have would also have solar. I would also advocate as mayor to try to work cooperatively with the MG&E to look at options for shared savings and shared opportunities, possibly revolving loans, shared opportunities to help the individual property owner become more sustainable. As a city, we can do things like a solar array, but for your average homeowner, that's not necessarily something that they can do. That's not necessarily something, even with the tax credits, it's not something they can necessarily do. Some of our citizens still have old furnaces that aren't even up to the 90% efficiency. I would like to see if there was an opportunity to work with MG&E in Dane County to see if we could have some kind of grant program that would work towards helping those people become more efficient. Not only does it help our climate, help sustainability, but it helps their own personal budget. Another thing that I think is very important for the sustainability and something that I'm passionate about is our bike and trail system. One of the best things that we can do for sustainability is help get cars off the road. How do we get cars off the road? We get cars off the road by creating different options for people to have transit. That's why I'm so much in favor of the North Mendota Trail, and I know you're getting sick of hearing me say that. But it's something that I'm very passionate about. It is a way for people to commute, to get out and have transportation back and forth without using cars. The more people we can get off the road, the more sustainable we are. So that would be a goal of mine, to continue to work with those particular projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Kermit, for the question. And Middleton's actually very fortunate. Kermit's a leader, and really with the sustainability helped push us through the climate change referendum a few years ago, which we supported 80%. So humanity faced a test, and if we pass, we get to keep the planet, right? I'm inspired by Greta, who tells us to act like the house is on fire because it is, right? And so fighting climate change has to be our top priority, and it has to infuse everything we do as a city. So the three priorities you asked for, I've released something I call the Green Plan, generating renewable energy and energy efficiency now, right? And it involves that we have a significant amount of TIF that we can spend, and the interest rates are low. So as a city, if we want to, we can issue debt so that we can have low interest loans for existing homeowners, particularly seniors or those who live in older homes, for sustainable, energy efficient home rehabilitation. Because we know that those investments pay for themselves in 7 to 10 years, just on cash flow, but they pay for themselves almost immediately in terms of the value of the property. And yet so many of our older homeowners, so many of our people who live in older homes, even the multifamily houses, they're just not making those investments, whether it's solar, whether it's air sealing, whether it's upgrading the furnace. So I've seen other cities around the country do this, and we need to be a leader in terms of making a low interest loan, even for people who are on fixed income, who are seniors, perhaps a zero interest loan to be paid back when the property is sold, so that they can invest in a new furnace, in energy efficient windows, in solar panels. We need to be a leader in this and show the rest of the state how it can be done. The second, as Dan said, we must expand public transportation. As you've probably seen in my literature, we have 18,000 people who drive into the city to work every day. If as a city, we can't find a way to have some infill and redevelopment near transit, we're going to force everybody to live further away and drive more. That's not going to help the planet. We need to expand public transportation for a sustainable city. And then the third policy I would propose is any new public building must be zero net energy. We need to take the leadership. It might cost more upfront, but it pays for itself in very short time in terms of reduced operating costs and zero net energy and universal design in public buildings. Thank you.
Well, great question, Kermit. So, as many of you know, I started the Sustainability Committee in 2008, and this committee is doing great things. And we passed a resolution that clean energy by 2035. And so to answer what are the three things which city or our planet, or what three things we all of us together can do. There are only three things which we can do in any case. Number one, clean energy. Number two, have our homes and buildings and all those things more energy efficient. And number three, you know what is the most efficient way of sequestering carbon? Those are the plants. So the trees, the green grass, they all sequester carbon. So they take CO2 and you have the oxygen which we breathe. So I think even I'm the part of the climate mayor's group, and they are starting this three-pronged approach: clean energy, homes, and the trees. We have about $3 trillion trees on the planet, and that number is going down. And I think if we all make a commitment that we are going to plant more trees, and that's going to make a huge difference. And I agree that we need a transport so that there are fewer and fewer people will be driving either to the campus or the state capitol or coming over here. Because right now we have buses going in the morning and the evenings, and there is not as much of service during the day. And so what other initiatives city could do? That we could actually, by ordinance, require that new buildings, or the new homes which are built, they are more energy efficient, and they are not only maybe net neutral in carbon. Maybe we need to have a negative carbon balance, not just only net neutral. But we start with net neutral and then go further down. So I think. So it is an 11th hour to save our planet. We have to work together to make every possible thing which we can do. And as the more buildings we build or we have, so we are already putting the solar cells on 3 new buildings, and Kelly is already working on the leads. So I think those are some of the things which we need to do, those 3 things and others which I added as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey Fink. I've lived in this community for about 12 years. I'm an ICU nurse manager. My wife is the CEO of a local architecture company. We do very well for ourselves. We are very lucky to buy after the housing bubble, which was, a reasonable cost for the homes. But in the last few years, we've been paying an extraordinary amount for childcare, I should say. This last year, we paid $37,000 for the 3 children we have that are 5, 3, and 1. We make good money. What are you going to do to make sure that the future, and I don't think you'll be able to help us, but what are you going to do for the future of Middleton to make sure that people like us, the young people in the community, can afford to move in and live in this community?
Yeah, to begin with, well, that's again very challenging question with no easy answers. But one of the things which we could start with is having homes which people can afford. The biggest investment which any family makes at any particular time is the home. And in case of Middleton, because it's a desirable city to live, so the people are actually bidding on the homes. Even yesterday, I had somebody calling that there's a family moving in here, and do I want to sell? I mean, this is just a bidding war happening here. So what we need to do in terms of affordable homes is that we need to have a small homes on smaller lots. We need to have the duplexes. We got to have triplexes when we have the fourplexes. And we don't need, that's one thing which we can do here to address this issue. Besides providing the affordable homes, the other issue is also how to provide the affordable childcare. And I don't know if there's a city could do anything in that, but I'm willing to look into it. So there are multiple questions, no easy answers here, but I think we can start with homes because that is the biggest expense which one makes in their lifetime. So if we can have, if people have the equity in their home, that's a lot better than having a rental or a subsidized 42 or Section 8 homes where at the end of that period they don't really have any equity. So I'm more interested in people having equity in whatever they have rather than where they don't. Thank you.
So Greg was it? That's Corey, sorry. Great question. So to follow up in terms of making homes affordable, the other thing the city should do is we used to have a down payment assistance program. And we stopped that a few years ago, and I think one of the things we need to do is to start it up again. Because one of the things that I do for a living is research housing, right? And we know that there's a large number of millennials, the largest generation in history, who are, on average about 28 years old now, so they're entering peak home buying years, and we want to make sure that we have a way for young people, young families to come into our community, and they may be able to qualify for the mortgage, but finding the savings for the down payment is really difficult. So that's where the city can leverage some dollars from the state and the federal sources to provide a down payment assistance program to help get young people in their homes. I talked earlier about my Green Up program to help existing homeowners rehab their homes. The other component of that has to be that for a lot of young people, they see that the houses that are available are either really expensive because they're new construction and they're far out so they have to drive, but the ones that are closer that maybe are walkable are much older and in need of rehab. So we can copy what other cities, Madison and Milwaukee, do this as well, where we can help you with a mortgage so that you can roll the cost of rehab as you acquire the house so that you can put some money in to fix it up so it's a place to live. But in terms of childcare, you're right. Second only to housing, childcare is every family's largest expenditure. And I was on a group that was looking at the economics of childcare, and it's very difficult because most of the cost of childcare is the cost of labor, right? And there's not much a city can do to try to pay or subsidize childcare workers who, let's be honest, are not earning a lot of money and find it difficult to live in Middleton, right? Much like a lot of our service sector workers, they're finding it difficult to live here. So one of the things we can look at is, as we're doing a TIF deal or a development deal or a new housing deal, right? You know that a lot of houses, a lot of apartments like to have retail on the ground floor. What if we did a deal where we helped them to have childcare on the ground floor, and then maybe in exchange for people working there, the developer could let them have some of the apartments, right? So that we can lower the cost of building new childcare facilities in a way that helps everyone. But the truth is, to bring down that cost, there are state programs, but there's not a lot that a city can do because it's just very expensive, right?
After hearing that amount, I am thankful that my children are all grown up. I don't know how we would have ever been able to do that. One of the things that both gentlemen have talked about is affordable housing. Yes, we need to have some affordable housing. We need to have some affordable home ownership opportunities. And we do. We need to think outside of the box. Like Kurt said, down payment assistance programs, various different programs, revolving loan programs. But we also need to take a little bit deeper dive than that. We need to really start to think outside of the box. So are there opportunities for shared equity programs? Are there opportunities for community land trusts? All these ideas, what they do is they help in a community land trust. It brings down the cost of the land. Instead of owning the land, you're more or less leasing the land. So when you're buying a house. Is there an opportunity somewhere for us to do that? Something we should be looking at. Also, equity share programs. There are programs, there are developers out there who will build you a house, and what they will do is they will share in the equity with you over the period of time that you're in that house. So yes, you grow equity at a slower amount, but that house is more affordable. These are things that we need to take a look at. These are kind of outside the box kind of things that we need to take a look at. There's nothing that we can really do with the day-to-day cost of daycare. As both gentlemen have said, we are not as a city in a situation where we can subsidize daycare. But what we can do is when a new business comes into town, wants to come into town, wants to put in an office building, wants to bring in more employees, we can say to them, and this is part of the job of a mayor, is you're not always able to say to people, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this. Part of what your job is to say, hey, this community needs some daycare. With this new building that you're going to bring in, these new 300 jobs that you want to bring in, we're all excited. We want to have those. Have you thought about a daycare on your premises? What could we do to help you make that a possibility? Those are the things that we could do as a city.
All right, up here.
Thank you, George. I have three quick questions. Number one, with respect to energy efficiency, would any of you or all of you support having requiring as a part of the building code the installation of electrical charging units in every garage or facility? And secondly, would you be willing to provide some kinds of incentives for people to retrofit their existing facilities, perhaps with some kind of a payoff when they sell their facilities, their houses, and do something along that line? And the third thing is that it seems like the TIF is being viewed as a one-trick pony, and I'm wondering if there's anything else, such as reducing or increasing the amount that the state pays as its share of educational expenses for our schools.
So, Ron, the answer is going to be complicated, right? So, require charging stations, I'd love to. But unfortunately, this is one area where every city in Wisconsin can only enforce the state building code. You can't be looser standards, you can't have more strict standards. So until the state changes the state building code, we can't require that you have charging stations. Can we provide an incentive, you said, to retrofit? Absolutely. And I think we should. We can do all sorts of things through incentives if we're willing to pay for it. And again, if it's in a TIF district, we can use some of the what's called small cap TIF for small loans, for retrofit, for charging stations, for solar panels. Again, with regard to school finance, sorry, we can't touch that under state law. I will say, if you want to get into the weeds, the value of property that we have in the TIF does not count against us in terms of the school district equalization aid formula. So it's not harming us, right? And that's about all you can say. So we can't use TIF to send it to the school district to lower the property tax, because that's just not allowed under state law. So, sorry to sometimes be a downer, but one of the things I do a lot is I work with legislatures. I testify to the legislature all the time. I think it's helpful to have a mayor who understands how state law works, so you know what you can and can't do. And unfortunately, oftentimes it gets to be the point where every time you try to do something creative or innovative or progressive or new, then our legislators like to pass a law prohibiting you from doing that. So maybe one of my goals is to do something so new and innovative, the legislature tries to create a law to stop us from doing it.
As Kurt said, with the building code, there's not much that we can do to force people to put in. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? All right. As Kurt said, there's not much that we can do to do with the building code. The building code is set by the state. The state mandates all that. Again, with new development, and anyone who comes to us with a TIF request, we can and we have asked for and had them put in charging stations in their facilities, and we will continue to do that. And again, we need to look at, is there collaborative opportunities for funding for people to be able to retrofit their buildings? And we could, the county funds, the MG&E is very progressive in the things that they're trying to do. MG&E actually is working very cooperatively and trying to do things in a more green fashion. And so if we can have a public-private partnership with them to do something like that, we can push for that. But again, unfortunately, in some things, our hands are tied.
Thank you, Ron. Great questions. Yeah, I guess Kurt would know more about the building codes. But the thing is that these are the building codes which are here now. So what we have to do is to work with the legislature and see if we can change them. I think you don't accept what is here now. You want to see how you can make a change here. So I was just reading another article from the Climate Mayors Group that having these charging stations should be the high priority for the whole nation. You can see the Teslas and so many other electric vehicles are coming on board, and the number is increasing by every day. So I think we need not only the charging station at home, you also need more charging stations at public places. And I would say that, helping wherever the new buildings are, helping with the charging station where we can, we should do. But I think as a nation, we have to change some of these zoning rules. We have to come up with, put this as a policy, and we have to work with the legislature that let's be done with the old economy. We are dealing with the new economy. We are dealing with the new generation, and let's bring about a change. So that's what I'm for, and I think if I need to work with some of the legislature to make this happen, I will. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Dale, and I'm a long-term Middleton resident. And as you talk about affordability and being fiscally conservative, I would like to know how each of you would approach the planning for redoing the Middleton campus, the city office buildings, and beyond that, the park that's being discussed. How can we look at those things more economically for the rest of us that would like to keep our taxes under control?
Not really, I didn't memorize it.
Okay. What I was asking is that as you talk about making housing affordable, part of that is reasonable tax burden. And right now the city is looking at redoing the whole campus, including the city building, and probably the library will get wrapped in there. And I'm wondering how these candidates would respond to trying to keep the costs under control, keep our taxes under control.
That's a great question. So we have a community campus committee. To begin with, I want to say thank you to them. They are doing a great job. We also have the consultants who have been working on this one, and they have been working hard as well. They came up with several options, and finally they have reduced those options to 3. So to begin with, the question will be, do we really need it? So we have started to look at that. We started with certain assumptions that we need a certain area, for example, for the library, for senior center, for the and the city hall. That's the first thing, that they're going to auditing it. Do we really need the library 3 times the size? It will be, if we were to go with the library size, it will be the combined size of our library, Sun Prairie Library, and the Fitchburg Library combined. So the first is just about, it's not exact, but it's just about those 3 libraries. And the question is that what we need? So the first is the auditing and making sure that what we are dealing with is the right thing. And the second thing is, what is wrong with the senior center which we have there now, and what we are trying to fix, because there are a lot of senior citizens who are quite happy with this. And then the third thing is, I'm going to look at all options, not just this thing which our committee is working on. We had some option in the center in the past that we will have a parking ramp, and then we will have apartments and things on the top. And then also, is it possible that we could actually fix the problems with the city hall and provide the expansion to the library? Because in 2016, there were some options provided that you could have a part of the library where the Terrace Avenue, or you could expand where the parking lot is. In any case, and then I have to look that, are we really willing to spend $50 to $60 million even after doing that? So I think we will make unless you have a really compelling reason to do it, so we are going to look at all the options that what is that which we should and shouldn't do. Thank you.
I think the first thing that we need to do is continue along with the process, the study that we're doing. And I think as part of that study, we're looking at the needs, and we're looking kind of at our wants. I think we're going to need to drill down to what our actual needs are. We're going to need to drill down to what our actual needs are. We're going to need to decide, do we need that much space for each individual item? And then we need to make the decision, how far are we willing to go? How far and how much do we want to raise our taxes? Or the other thing that we look at is we look at timing. We look at the timing of when we do it. As we pay off some of the buildings that we already have, we can take those properties, come off of our capital improvements, come off our loans. At that point, how much money does that free up? Is it at all possible? Can we take that money, and is it possible to take that money that we saved through those payments which we've been making and use that money to pay for the new civic campus? And if, yes, the timing is such, we put together the timing so that we can do that, how much is that? How much will that amount to as far as a net neutral gain? The next question is, what is our vision? And is our vision going to be, are we going to have a civic campus that's going to be strictly city buildings? Or are we going to have a civic campus that somehow has some kind of private component to it? Having a private component to it can make it a public-private project, in which case some of the funding and some of the expense of that would be shared. So I think the thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that our wants match our needs, and that we're responsible in taking the two of those and mixing the two of those. And then our timing. What is our timing? How are we going to do this? And are we going to be able to, between a public-private partnership and the money that we save from paying off these other buildings, are we going to be able to do this without raising our taxes to an extraordinary amount?
So thank you for that question, and Dan is exactly right on a lot of the details. We had a big meeting about this on January 25th, and so if you haven't had a chance to watch the video where the architects are presenting the 3 different concepts, go onto the city's website and look at it, and there will be opportunities for additional public input on the community campus plan. But let's face reality, which is a lot of the buildings that we have, the library and City Hall in particular, are reaching a point where the consultants tell us that putting more money into it may actually in the long run cost us too much, that they're just old and obsolete in a sense that the operations and ongoing operations cost might cost us more in the long run than being able to consolidate those 3 features together into one building where we can have shared space, so we can have community gathering facilities, we can have City Hall, we can have flexible space for community groups to meet, we can rent out some of the space so that there's some revenue being generated, and we can design it in such a way that it has much more efficiencies in terms of space, more efficiency in terms of energy, and lower operating costs. Because right now, City Hall, it's pretty expensive to operate. It's very inefficient. It's very old, right? So Dan is right that we have a lot of the debt for some of our capital projects is going to be coming off the books. We have a very good bond rating. Interest rates are low. So we may be able to go into debt, issue some debt to pay for the facility, and then it would be paid for in little bits over time rather than through property taxes right now. But of course, 60 million, because that was the first line estimate from the architect, seems like a lot. But if we can consolidate the library and City Hall and other government buildings with, as Dan said, private development, or sell some of the other land for private development, we can recoup most of that cost. And as I said before, to make a public building zero net energy, to be LEED Platinum, right, may cost $3 to $5 million up front, which seems like a big price tag. But the energy savings and the operational efficiencies over time pay for themselves. So at some point in time, it just becomes a math question of whether we're throwing good money after bad by continuing to try to rehab and incrementally try to fix old buildings, or whether by doing something new, we can get some efficiencies, sell some of the land, or lease it for private development, and thereby cover our costs. Now, we also do have, I talked earlier, one of the ways we can pay for capital facilities is through impact fees. So we should look at that as well. And that just means that's a way of having new development pay for some of the capital costs for public buildings.
My name is Joan Ziegler, and my question goes to our sustainability issue as a community. We are committed to sustainability, and we are looking at alternatives for energy, for transportation, footpaths, bike paths, electric vehicles, but we're also in the planning process for an airport to promote private jet flights, which is one of the highest use of carbon in the country for private transportation. And I'm wondering how you view the airport expansion and the master planning process that's going on at this present time.
Thank you for that question. There's been a lot of misconceptions about what's going on with the airport. We hear from various different folks that we're planning for an airport expansion. That's entirely false. We are not planning for any kind of airport expansion. What we are doing is we are taking the airport, which is an asset of the city of Middleton, and we are doing a master plan for it. Every single asset in the city of Middleton, whether it be parks, whether it be roads, we have a master plan for it. The airport is no different. We put together a master plan. The master plan is paid for in part by the state and federal, and the share that the city had to come up with was a small share. It made perfect sense to have an airport master plan. I am in favor of an airport master plan. The airport master plan at this point is an outline. It gives us an outline of what the discussion will be at a later time for the airport. That master plan will say, do we need expansion? Do we think we need expansion? Do we think we need new hangars or not need new hangars? Where do we envision the airport being in 10, 15 years? That's what the master plan is going to do for us. It is going to give us an outline for topics for discussion. I am in favor of the master plan. I am in favor of finishing the master plan so that we have a basis and we have an outline so that we can continue this discussion.
I think you'll find that my position is the same as Dan's, and I actually want to acknowledge and appreciate his leadership in getting the council to pass resolution 2019-31 that states, that was passed unanimously, that I support. The idea that let's finish the master plan process so that we know what our options are. And what that will tell us, it's a little hard for people to say whether you're for or against something because we don't know what the thing is. But here's the way I think about everything. Once we have all the information, we will know the costs and the benefits of any potential expansion, and we will know the costs and benefits of non-expansion. And then we just have to sit down and as a community think through where do we want the airport in 20 years. But I will give you, so I will insist that we finish the master plan process. And again, there's a lot of misperceptions that something is already, that the deal is cooked, and that is just not true. Nobody in the city believes that. Council has affirmed that. We need to finish the plan so that we can see what the options are. But I will tell you my own view, is that expanding an airport, like any public facility, has to meet a pretty high cost-benefit ratio before we decide to spend that much money and impact the neighboring homes. And I've not seen any evidence yet that tells me that the need is compelling enough for the cost. But I'm not going to be a politician and tell you ahead of time whether I'm for or against something. I'm a planner, I'm an economist. I want to see the whole plan, I want to see the environmental impact. We can weigh the costs and the benefits of expansion or non-expansion. What I'm going to guess is that it'll probably say we need to build a few more hangars, but there may not be any compelling justification to expand the runway. And again, as a city committed to sustainability, I'd have to see some pretty compelling justification before I'd support expanding the runway. That may exist. We just haven't seen it yet, so let's finish the master plan process.
Well, excellent question. I'm going to give you a little bit of the background. So the airport is an enterprise fund. That means it's paid for by the fee from the hangars and also some money from the feds. That's the FAA and Bureau of Aeronautics. So it does not cost anything to the taxpayers. That's number one. And number two, the history of this master plan. I was on the airport commission at the time. So to begin with, there was a great demand from the people. They wanted the airport hangars. So it was, to begin with, it started as a mini plan just for the whether or not we could justify having the airport hangar somewhere on the northeast side. So then that didn't go very far, and we realized our master plan for the airport was really pretty old, and you need to have an updated master plan to be able to get the funding from the feds. So that's where it started. So to begin with, it was really small amount of money. Now it's costing total $250,000. $50,000 out of that is coming from the TIP money. So now back to the question that whether to expand or not to expand and what is the mandate. So Mead and Hunt was hired a while ago, and they're working on this plan. To begin with, some people did have a conception, maybe it was that the plan was just to expand, but we have made sure now that is really not the only option. Mead and Hunt knows that they have to look at all options, expand or not to expand. And I give you, so they're in the process of putting that plan together, and we will wait until that's done before we have any judgment. But the city, as a part of this planning process, we had one of these survey called the Polco survey, and in that survey they asked the airport users, that means the pilots, that do you want or do you need or do you think the airport should be expanded? 93% of the airport users, 93% of the airport users were quite happy the way the airport is. So then, as a scientist, try to understand the basic problems. I decided that I will take a flight, which we paid for, with the airport manager. So I flew with him, and I looked at all around, landing from the east side, landing from the west side, and trying to understand that how long the runway is, and then also landing on a grass strip. And in this case, I had multiple things which I was trying to do by taking that flight. So I think in the basic thing is here, we are going to wait until the master plan is done, but the thing is that there are 93% of the people who are quite happy the way the runway is, and there's also new technology where the new planes will be able to land in much shorter distance. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Christy Warner. One of the most powerful ways that a mayor shapes the city is through your commission appointments. I would like to hear what your plans are for how you will seat those appointments, and especially with an eye toward inclusivity and diversity in the city.
So that's a great question. And again, if you didn't hear it, one of the few powers of the mayor is to actually appoint people to commissions. And one of my commitments as mayor is to make commission appointments boring again. And what I mean by that is there's been a lot of controversy, and it seems like stirring things up for really no good reason. So, as you said, let's take, for example, the airport commission, right? I think we should appoint people. I think Dan and I have a similar view on this. We've had many conversations. You should appoint people to the airport commission who understand something about how an airport runs, right? One of the commissions I will look at closely is the Public Works Commission, because I think if we're going to have a city that's more sustainable in terms of our transportation, we do need to think beyond just kind of wider roads and faster traffic, and utilize things such as traffic calming and what are called road diets to slow the traffic and to make it safer. So in those type of areas, I'm going to look for people who have a wide range of expertise and a wide background. And obviously, as you said, we need to make sure that committee appointments reflect the diversity and interests of our city. But on the other hand, I think we need to respect the fact that there have been people who have been serving on commissions for a long time and have a lot of institutional knowledge and history of the city. And so just arbitrarily removing people from commissions just to stir things up doesn't seem to serve any purpose and deprives us of that institutional knowledge. Again, Chris's applause.
I would echo a lot of what Kurt says. I think that our commissions, the thing as mayor that I would look at is making sure that anybody that I would appoint to a commission or a committee would have some kind of relevant experience, expertise in that subject matter. That they wouldn't just be somebody that had a passing interest. You know, just because you like to watch airplanes doesn't make you qualified to be on the airplane commission, you know, on an airport commission. So we need to make sure that folks have an expertise in the field. Again, changing committee members just for the sake of changing committee members makes no sense. We need to make sure that we have a balance of new members and older members on our commissions and committees so that we don't lose the institutional knowledge. So much of our work in the city is done by committees. So much of our work is done by committees. The volunteers, you citizens that do it, that there is no way that I, as a council member, can possibly do all that work. I can't go to every single one of those meetings. I'm on a number of committees and commissions, but I can't go to them all. And frankly, I don't have an expertise in everything. So I need to be able to rely on people that are on the commissions and committees that have an expertise, that have the knowledge, to be able to help guide our decisions. I too believe that the people that serve on our committees and commissions should be reflective of our community, both diversity, gender. It should be, we should look at our committees and see Middleton. And so that would be the way that I looked at it. That would be my vision for how to make committee appointments for the city of Middleton.
Christy, thank you for your question. One of the mayor's responsibility is to appoint members to the committees. And each committee has an ordinance, and except one or two which are ad hoc committees. And so you follow the ordinance. That means they have the appointments, which is from 2 to 5 years, depending upon which committee that is. So until I became a mayor, so the people could stay there as long as they wanted. So, and again, who was appointed? It was, I don't really know what the process was. Maybe there was a process. So I opened the appointments to the whole city. Anybody who was interested in any committees, they could apply. And for the first time ever, to my knowledge, every person, just about every person who applied was interviewed, and I looked at their qualification. In some cases, even did more checking as well. So now there was and then of course you look at their expertise. You don't appoint somebody who doesn't know about that particular commission unless, even if it's the youth commission, you would want to know the people who are passionate about serving our youth. So in every single case, I looked at their qualification. In the past, there were hardly any people who wanted to serve on the committees. And now I had lots of people who were lining up to serve on this committee. And I want to say thank you to George. He actually drew the map of from which areas all those people come from. And I try to have a gender equity. Before I started appointing, there were commissions which didn't have a single woman on the commission. Now every single committee and commission and board has at least one woman. And then the other was, in the past, for whatever reason, most of the members were from two districts, District 2 and District 6. And there's a reason for it, because there are a lot of qualified people from those districts, and they apply for it. So, but I could see that this has to represent the whole city. So now it still is not as representative as I would like to, but I have started the process and it's happening. And now mention was made that appointing somebody to the airport commission who knows what they are doing. The chair of the airport commission has his own airport. He has his own heliport. And he was the person who actually helped with the Middleton Airport right to begin with in 2004. Everybody at the airport commission, well, the elders, are appointed because they are elders, but the others, they have some expertise about the airport. There's some appointments, for example, one from the town of Middleton, because it's right at the corner. Our airport is right at the corner, so I wanted to have a representation because well, it was somehow recommended to have some elected person from the town of Middleton as well. So my appointments are based on qualification, they are based on gender equity, they are based on representing the Middleton population. For the first time ever, there are few minorities on some of our commissions. So the commission, these committee appointments are made very carefully, and I follow the ordinance, and I will keep doing it. Thank you.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Our three candidates, thank you to them for showing up. Thank you to Capital Brewery for giving us the space. If you have more questions for the candidates, you can prevent them from leaving. There's only one exit, I'm sure. The beer stube is open until 9 o'clock, and please don't forget to tip the bartenders. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.